Today we are going to do something on the disturbances of the mind, and we will take up a passage written in the Living Within from, I think, by the mother on this aspect, on anxiety. Yes, all of us have some form of anxiety. It is obvious that what especially characterizes man is this mental capacity of watching himself live. The animal lives spontaneously, automatically. And if it watches itself live, it must be to a very minute and insignificant degree. And that is why it is peaceful and does not worry. Even if an animal is suffering because of an accident or an illness, this suffering is reduced to a minimum by the fact that it does not observe it, does not project its consciousness into the future, does not imagine things about its illness or its accident. With man, there has begun this perpetual worrying about what is going to happen. And this worry is the principal, if not the sole cause of his torment. With this objectivizing consciousness, there has begun anxiety, painful imaginations, worry, torment, anticipation of future catastrophes, with the result that most men, and not the least conscious, the most conscious of them, live in perpetual torment. Man is too conscious to be indifferent. He is not conscious enough to know what will happen. Truly, it could be said without fear of making a mistake that of all earth's creatures, he is the most miserable. The human being is used to being like that because it is an atavistic state which he has inherited from his ancestors. So here what is being said is that because the human mind has the capacity to observe itself and to project into the future and to imagine the future, unlike the animal mind that is instinctive and lives in the present completely. The suffering and torment of the human mind and human beings is far more. We tend to imagine when there is illness the worst that can happen. We tend to imagine when there is pain the worst. We dwell on that pain and make it worse. So this dwelling on something and this imagining into the future is what the mother says here is the cause of human torment and is the cause of the torment and sufferings we go through. So whether it is a physical illness or a mental problem or an emotional problem, we tend to dwell on it, make it larger than life, and project into the future of what is next going to happen. So if something is bothering you, take that up. What is right now bothering each of us? Take one thing that is bothering you and see how that works. Do you dwell on it? Do you think about it? Do you visualize what is going to happen in the future about it? If you do, then you will inevitably, if it is a negative thing, inevitably it will bother you and you will have torment. If it is a positive thing, it will bring the opposite, pleasure. So this is the way the mind works. Can you think of on earth, which other creature do you know, besides man, that has this misery? Do dogs are dogs miserable? Do you see animals miserable? Do you see birds miserable? They may have suffering, they may have, even if they are hurt or if they are unwell, they have a certain living in the present, that is over. They don't dwell on it, they don't carry it forward, and they don't bring the past into the present and the past into the future. So, the human being is used to being like that because, and why is the human being like that? Because it is an atavistic state which he has inherited from his ancestors. Atavisms are hereditary traits that pass from generation to generation, parent to parent, and so on. So in certain families you will see certain atavisms. In certain generations you will see certain atavisms. So because it has become part of his atavistic state, which he has inherited from his ancestors, but it is truly a miserable condition. And it is only with this spiritual capacity of rising to a higher level and replacing the animal's consciousness by a spiritual super consciousness that there comes into the being not only the capacity to see the goal of existence and to foresee the culmination of the effort, but also a clear-sighted trust in a higher spiritual power to which one can surrender one's whole being, entrust oneself, give the responsibility for one's life and future, and so abandon all worries. Of course, it is impossible for man to fall back to the level of the animal and lose the consciousness he has acquired. Therefore, for him, there is only one means, one way to get out of this condition he is in, which I call a miserable one, and to emerge into a higher state where worry is replaced by a trusting surrender and the certitude of a luminous culmination. And this way is to change the consciousness. So what here the Mother is saying is that man doesn't have the choice or to go back to the animal state, because if one could go back to the animal state, one would not worry, because animals don't worry. He can only have two options before him. We have only two options before us. Either we stay in this mental state of an ordinary human consciousness governed by the ordinary mind that in its very nature and functioning and atavistic formation tends to worry, tends to dwell on the negatives, tends to imagine the worst, tends to prolong suffering. Or, she says, you have a choice. You can change your consciousness. You can go to a higher mental state, a higher spiritual state. And then here in the next paragraph, she talks about how to do that. So we'll end here today.
ॐ आयतु वरदा देवी अक्षरं ब्रह्म सस्मितम्